For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lori Power. My company is MP Benefits, and I'm a group benefit consultant. My whole business is about employees and their business and building that culture and wellness within the business. That all happens through success. Brainchild for this weekly Zoom cast was to bring in experts who we could have a conversation with that will help us grow our business and our professional concepts. And I'm so, like I say, this is the third time I really pick on Lois a lot. So I thank her for coming in for sure. What vision question should we get them to answer?
I think the first question that I would love all of you to think about is the time horizon that is really resonating with you right now. I think a lot of times when we hear this word vision, it seems big and overwhelming, and oftentimes we think of a long-term organizational vision, like, okay, we're talking vision, but does that mean I have to sit in the boardroom and talk about the next 5 years with a bunch of colleagues? And that just seems like I can't even go there right now. Or yeah, I mean, maybe I would think about my vision for the future, but when does that actually even mean? That's just out in the distance. And especially now that the sort of time-space continuum has been completely destroyed by this last year and no one even knows what day or week it is anymore, that seems even more sort of out of reach. So the first thing that I would love for you guys to think about is, as you hear this word vision, and to just define it the way that I speak about vision, is a definition of success at a specific point in the future. Okay, so when you think about your definition of success at a specific point in the future, I want you to write down a few numbers on your sheet of paper. So either I'm going to have you put a 90 for a 90-day vision. So if you feel like right now the thought of this next year is just too much, and you feel like you could, you know what, I could really wrap my arms around the next 90 days, I want you to put a 90 in the chat. If you feel like, you know what, this has been such a crazy year and I want to feel like I can sort of make this next year happen instead of letting this next year happen to me, put a 365, right? That's a year. So 90 or 365. And if you are somebody who's saying, you know what, there has been so much change that I want to zoom out way farther than that. I am in a position where so many things are shifting personally and professionally and in the world that I want to take that longer term view. I want to think maybe 3 years out or 5 years out. So you're either going to put a 90, a 365, a 3, or a 5. Okay, so a 90-day vision, 1 year vision, 3-year vision, 5-year vision. So as you think through that, just remember that visioning is like an accordion. You can stretch it out and have it be for the long term, or you can condense it down and even have a vision for your day. So that's the other thing. If you're somebody who's like, you know what, I don't even remember what I had for breakfast, let me just get to the end of tonight, then you can also put a 1 for a 1 day.
90, we have a lot of 90s starting, including me. I had a 90. I'm not surprised at you, Anthony, 180 days. 12-week, Jennifer says she always has a 12-week
Awesome.
year plan, an annual plan, and a 5-year plan. And we're going to highlight the difference between the visions and the goals. That's where we're going to start this conversation. Patty says 365. Tim has 3. Phyllis a full year, as Anthea revised that and said full year. 90, 365, all of them. So well planned. You're anally organized, just like me, Jennifer. I knew we liked one another. 3 years from Pat. Tracy is a full year, somewhere between 90 and 365. Okay, so let's highlight first, before we get into the nuts and bolts of the vision. Many times, and including me prior to getting to know you well, is I would confuse my goals with the vision.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Lori, because again, so many people, when I'm talking with them, you know, especially back in the day when we did like in-person networking events in the before times, you know, I would say something about vision, and people would say, oh, do you do goal setting? And for me, the idea is that how can we possibly create our goals if we don't know our vision, right? If we don't know our definition of success at that specific point in the future, then how can we possibly sort of create those goals in a vacuum without knowing what that longer term view really looks like? And there's also a few other components. One is what I call the goalkeeper principle. So when somebody says that they have a goal, in my mind, that implies a goalkeeper, right? So some of the goals, not all of the goals certainly, but some of the goals that we create for ourselves, we don't necessarily realize it in the moment, but we are creating a goal that really depends on somebody else. So I'll give you an example there. I worked with a visionary who he wanted more than anything else to be named top 30 under 30 in Birmingham, Alabama, which is, certainly it's not Bright Lights Big City, not Forbes magazine 30 under 30, but still, I mean, that's a huge honor to be named 30 under 30 in whatever city you are part of. And for me, one of the first things that I said was, I love where you're coming at from that I love where you're coming at from the perspective of wanting to have that recognition, but that goal has a very clear goalkeeper, right? That editor of that magazine could have a favorite niece who certainly, maybe she's 29 and a half, right? She's right on the edge, but they really like her and she makes the top 30 under 30 and not you, right? So you could have done everything in your power and still not hit that goal. And if we're so tied to that goal that has a goalkeeper, then if and when we don't hit that goal, then we feel like we have failed. And so it's really critical to recognize if there is a goalkeeper. And again, I like to say, how can we sort of figure out what the kernel of the vision is within that? What's the kernel of the non-negotiable, the kernel of the thing that we can control? So for him, it was, well, yeah, I mean, 30 under 30 would be great, but why do I really want that? I really want recognition in the local press because you guys, he loves his community so much. It's part of his heart to give back. That is such a big part of what he wants to do and why he exists and why he has the business he does. So that was the kernel. That was the real vision. That was the definition of success. 30 under 30 was an example of that. But when he was able to stop fixating on this one goal that had a goalkeeper and really step back and say, what success really means is just having recognition in the local press. I cannot tell you guys. It was like he should have had a portfolio of all of the places that he was profiled in the community. And I can guarantee you, if he would have just stuck on 30 under 30, he would not have been opening himself up or looking for all those opportunities for recognition in the local press. He would have felt like, well, yeah, sure, I've got, interviewed by the Business Journal and I get interviewed by the, XYZ, but it's not 30 under 30, so it doesn't really count, or it's not really that great, or, I'll be happy when finally I get that, and that's really when I'll be happier. That's when I'll feel successful. But because we again shifted the language, and language is so critically important. We shifted the language itself. He was able to say, we had so many texts going back and forth, and he would be saying, I just literally had this interview with somebody, and we would say, recognition of the local press, recognition of the local press. And guess what ended up happening? He ended up getting 30 under 30 as well. Right. But then it wasn't, oh, this is the pinnacle. Somebody else has decided that I'm successful, and so now I can say that I am. It was just like, what an incredible honor on top of everything else, right? And so that's what I mean when I say the goalkeeper principle, because those of you who know me know that I know nothing about sports, but I do know if you're a soccer player, you can have the best nutrition, best mindset, best coach, best sponsors, best training, best everything, and you could go out there with every single piece of your soul, every cell in your body intent on scoring that goal. And then you could have a goalie who also has the best this and the best that and the best that, and their only thing is to keep you out of that goal. So it's the idea that when we are putting so much time and energy and effort and resources into creating the success that we want to make sure that we're doing that in such a way that we aren't sort of allowing a goalkeeper to have our success in their hands in the way that they can either bestow it upon us or take it away. Right? We don't ever want to be in that position. We want ourselves to be in the position to create that success for ourselves. Now, it does not mean that this visionary should have just forgotten about 30 under 30 and pretended that he didn't care. And that wasn't what it was about. It was just about really discovering the kernel of that definition of success for him and ensuring that it wasn't tied to a goalkeeper. So that's sort of one.
You give your dreams wings when you create them as a vision and you write them down.
It's sort of, so it is that push and pull. So the one thing I've heard so much from people is that they write down goals, right? And I'm sure Jennifer, the clients that she works with, do not feel like this, because in her coaching practice, I'm sure she really helps them to feel that connection with their goals. But I know so many people do have this sense that they look at their goals that they've written down and they just feel like the goals are shouting at them, telling them everything they haven't done and how they haven't gotten this to this goal yet and how you're really going to do it. And it feels like their goals are just pushing, right? And they're ultimately just sort of some words on a sheet of paper. And when I think about words on a sheet of paper, it's kind of like, well, you can crumple it up and throw it in the trash can, But our vision pulls us. So if you think of like trying to push a piece of spaghetti, you're not going to get very far, right? But if you pull, right, if you're in a tug of war and you try to push, right, you don't have leverage. You have the leverage when you pull. So our vision pulls us forward in a very different way. And it also ensures that we're not creating goals in a vacuum. I think sometimes we feel this pressure, especially in the new year, to, you know, come out, swing in and say, this year's going to be different, and try to utilize this motivation and the excitement of this new year. And that lasts like about 24 minutes. And then life happens, and then we need something much stronger than that initial burst of new year excitement to pull us forward and not just push us. And so the idea is, when we are really able to articulate, what would be the evidence? How would I know? What would I look around and see in my world that would be different when I create that future that I want, when I get to that 90-day point or that 365-day point, and I've created the life around that I want around me? When we have that built that memory of the future, right? And I get goosebumps when I say that we have that memory of the future, the evidence that we've gotten to where we wanted to go, what that will look like and feel like, smell like, touch, taste like, feel like. Then we can work backwards and say, well, what are the targets along the way? What are the benchmarks? What's going to be the evidence along the way to let me know that I am getting there, that I am on track to get there? So when we have the 5-year vision, mine's for June 1st, 2022, right? My current 5-year vision, then I work backwards. Well, what are my milestones in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5? Then the milestones for year 1, how can I really step that back, and what does the next 90 days look like? So again, it is about creating so much more context around them and not creating those goals in a vacuum. So often when we do, we just sort of end up shooting all over ourselves, as my mom always used to say. And Lisa, I'm so glad this is resonating with you, because we sit down and we think, well, I should say that I'm going to get more sales, and I should say that I'm going to, exercise, and I should say that I'm going to eat perfectly, and I should. But why? Is that what we really want? Or is it what we think we should want? Is it what our past self wanted? Is it based on our old definition of success pre-COVID? And we feel like we're just trying to chase that. And maybe if we shifted our mindset from goals to vision, we would realize we don't have to chase an old definition of success. We can recalibrate our definition of success for this new era, this new age and stage that we're in, this new era in the world, and redefine, reclaim what success means to us moving forward.
I think that's a really valid point too, Lois, because despite what's happening, and you talked about it at the beginning, what you can control, right? And all the things that you cannot control. So if you have your vision, if I have my vision, what's going on in the environment doesn't really alter my vision. If Anthea has her vision of her startup and she has met her criteria of why she has that vision, what's going on in the environment isn't going to alter that vision, but it may alter the goals.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that's so critical to remember is that I was speaking with it was what WPO, a women's presidents organization, and I'm not sure if they have chapters all over the world, but in this, it was a great chapter in San Diego, and one of the women was saying, well, what about COVID? I mean, if I would have written a vision before COVID, wouldn't it have completely changed? Wouldn't I have just thrown that in the trash can? And one of the most incredible things is the visionaries that I've worked with through this time, and this goes from organizations that have a huge staff to individual leaders, they did not change one word in their vision. Not one word. And for one of the organizations I work with here in San Diego, when we were sort of, okay, now they had a 1-year vision and now we have their next 3-year vision. I can't tell you how many of the employees, how many of the team members talked about this feeling of being able to latch onto something and feel like that was their anchor. And as crazy as everything was swirling around them, they knew that is where they were headed. And while their path was going to have to change time and time again, the destination would remain the same. And if you think about when you get this feeling of getting pulled in all these different directions, so often it's because your path is always changing, but your destination is always changing too. And if you think about Google Maps, like if you had your phone in grayscale, right, and you're pulling up Google Maps, which is suddenly not quite as exciting, and you want to get somewhere, and you have your destination and it's telling you where to go, but then, you think, oh, well, I don't really want to go there. I want to go here. Google reroutes and sends you there, but then, you know what? I don't want to go there. I want to go here. At a certain point, Google is going to just time out. You're going to get the rainbow wheel of death and it's just going to stop. And that's how
In
it is,
grayscale.
right? In grayscale. That's how it is for us. If our plan is always changing and our destination is always changing, you simply can't navigate. And the last thing I'll say, and then of course I want to bring it to your questions and your thoughts, is the same visionary I was mentioning, who the 30 under 30 visionary, he has a security business, and it was very, very much focused on events. And so you can imagine overnight that evaporated. And he got onto our visionaries Facebook group the next day, and he said, I mean, and he had to let go of a tremendous percentage of his staff. So this is not something that he took lightly. And he said, the destination is the same. The vision still holds. I just have to change the vehicle to get there. So sometimes it's not even just the road that we're taking that's different. It's actually the vehicle itself. And it's expecting that. It's almost excitement for that. It's knowing that if we just knew exactly how to get from point A to point B, what would be the point of life? It would be so boring, right? The way that our vision is going to become a reality will happen in ways that you never expected. And some of that is some of the most exciting parts of it, is getting to see it unfold and being open to that and anticipating and expecting and knowing that the plan should and will change, should change, because we want to be nimble and flexible rather than feeling like it's this static thing that's concrete and boxing us in. It's really opening us up to this ability, this opportunity to see, wow, there are so many more ways that I could arrive at this vision, at this definition of success at that specific point in the future than, pardon me, perhaps what I had even thought of before.
One of the key elements that have stuck with me since you and I first met, Lois, is you said if we were Harvard Business School students, right? And our professor gave us the assignment of writing down that we were going to open a restaurant in the middle of a pandemic. Now, when we first talked about this, we had expected it to be over long before now, but nonetheless, we were going to open a restaurant and we were going to build everything we needed. We were going to vision what success looked like under those constraints for our business. And by God, we were all going to get an A, right? There was not any of us who were not going to get an A. And it so resonated with me. And that's why I say, regardless of the situation surrounding us, our visions, our vision of what we are and how we'll pull it through. I mean, that's key.
Sometimes when you think about what that vision looks like, one of the things that I'm going to encourage you guys to do after this call is, I always think of sort of this visioning arc. Whenever you want to think about your vision, usually the first thing that, when I ask a group of people, what's the first thing you think of when I say vision, one of the first things people say is future. So most people think, oh, I'm talking about my vision, I'm talking about my future, I should sit down and write about my future. No, stop. Take your pen off the page, right? It is so overwhelming to try to sit down and write about your future. You just kind of sit there and you look at this blank page and it's kind of screaming at you, and in all its blankness. And it can feel like, how am I supposed to know? And we start shoulding and we start judging and all these things. So what I really want to encourage you guys to think through, and I know we talked about this last time, but the idea that before you can even begin to think about where you're headed, you've got to understand how you got to where you are. Then you've got to really take stock of where you are now and gain a true lens on your current reality. That's something a visionary that I worked with, he coined that phrase and I loved it, a true lens on your current reality. And really only then, once you connect the dots between how you've gotten to where you are, really taken stock of where you are now, at that point, you sort of peel back enough layers to be able to think about what that future looks like. So if you're sitting here thinking, I want the 90-day vision, but I don't know exactly what it should be, know you're in good company, know that you're actually in exactly the right spot. I would want you to take some more time to kind of think through it. It's sort of like, for those of us in BNI chapters, it's always so funny to me when somebody says, I'm looking for a referral for this person. And in the moment somebody says, oh, I have a referral for you. You don't yet. You haven't talked to the other person yet. You can't possibly have a referral yet. So it's almost like, it's okay, you don't have a vision yet, right? You need some of that time for yourself to be able to sort of go through that arc. And at that point, you'll be able to sort of articulate for yourself. And I always, really encourage not just thinking, but of course, connecting all that's swirling around in your head, putting it down into paper and doing it in pen, not pencil. And it's not because it's supposed to be perfect. It is so that you recognize that anything that comes up during the visioning process is valid and it is part of the process. So I don't want you to, if you write something down and you're like, I don't know, don't cross it out. Put it in brackets, put it in parentheses, put an asterisk next to it, but don't cross it out. That came up for a reason, right? So it was an important part of your process. And so even when I'm sitting there and I'm working with a visionary right, across from me, and they get out and they're about to, no, brackets, parentheses, something, that piece is just as important as everything else. And again, it's even more important because by writing it down, you recognize it wasn't going to pass the filter to make it to the ultimate vision, but it still came up for a reason that we don't want to sort of invalidate by scratching it out.
We want to make sure too that it's part of getting to know your own self.
Very much.
And you're part of validating who you are. And I think, so often we have reveal remorse. Anybody have that? Oh, I met somebody and I told them way too much. Like they're never calling back. I got that look like Phil gave me, and I just know we're on the outs now. And sometimes when we write in pen, even if it's for us, we get a bit of that reveal remorse. Oh, you know what? I shouldn't write that down. Somebody else might read it. Do you come across that with your visionaries as well?
Yeah, that's such a critical point that you bring up, is this idea of really giving ourselves permission, but also challenging ourselves to be really, really honest with ourselves during the process. And Lori, like you said, sort of being able to get over that hurdle of judging the things that come up or keeping them down because, oh my gosh, if I say this thing, then it means I have to maybe do something about it. Or if I say this thing that I've been thinking about for like years, and I'm admitting that it's not going to be part of my future, then that has a lot of ramifications. And it does. I mean, I don't say this lightly in any way. I've had many people go through the visioning process and end up relationships, and they end up, go parting ways in a relationship they were in. And it's because when you kind of put it down and you have a pen, you can't look at all of those pieces of the process and these same things and these same patterns coming up again and again and again without realizing that there is a root cause there. And again, not just, of course, our relationships. There are also times where incredible relationships have blossomed because of the visioning process. And I know we have an amazing representative of that right here in the room. The man that I am traveling across the country with is absolutely the man in my vision. And my vision kept me from marrying the wrong guy, about 5 years ago. So thank goodness for that. But it's this idea that going through that process, it really does challenge us to be incredibly honest with ourselves and to write the vision that we have for ourselves, not the vision we think somebody else wants us to have.
Yeah, I think in 90 days, what I will see is 12 new happy client graphics. What I will hear is client wins and positive impact statements from those clients. And what I'll feel is pride for their achievements. So every year I have a wildly important goal, and this year's one wildly important goal is 48 new happy clients who've improved their productivity and profitability. So I break that into 4 12-week periods. And so it's 12 happy clients in the first 90 days. So,
and is that the vision of you, Jennifer, or is that the goal for the company?
Yeah, that's okay. So the vision, because I use a scorecard as well, and the scorecard is actually represented by champagne glasses. So, cheersing each one of those. So what I picture is, the glass raised every time one of those new happy client graphics come in.
Go in here, but Jennifer is an amazing person. She has authored a number of books. So if anybody in the room wants to have an excellent sales book and strategy book, look up Jennifer and see her work. And when I was talking to you, Jennifer, what really struck me was why you started in the first place, that helping people achieve, right? That I can train people and they understand the way I'm putting it out there, and you're helping them achieve their goals and what's important to them.
No, this is what it's all about. It's amazing. You know, the more vision out there, the better.
I was just gonna say I don't have a specific vision yet, but I have been in instances where I guess going back to goals and like working to achieve like some kind of milestone things, and along the way there's some like really awesome things that happen, but because you look at the end and you say, oh, I didn't get there, or I didn't really get to where I want to be, you kind of like discount the really good things that happened along the way. So I've kind of learned to like really appreciate like every moment of the process, whether it's good or bad, and just kind of use that as a driving force or a learning lesson in getting to where I want to go. So
I do have a question. So when I work with clients and also myself on goals and creating new habits and doing that stuff, it's very identity based. So it's not necessarily what do I want to have, it's who do I want to be. So it's like, what do I want to have and who do I need to be to get there? Would you consider that the same as the visioning process, Lois?
Vision definitely gets down to the core, absolutely, of not just, and I think that's what helps us from shooting all over ourselves. So when you do that deep work of really, how did I get here? Where am I now? And where do I really want to go? Not where I think somebody else wants me to go. I think it really does help us clarify what is that core of me. Again, in that process of how did I get here? Where am I now? It's really clarifying, again, those core values that we have for ourselves, our own driving purpose, all those pieces that have propelled us forward and held us back, and what parts of that identity are so core to our being and we want to bring with us into the future, and what parts of our identity do we recognize are always going to be parts of our identity, but we want to see how we can not necessarily, not in any way try to sever them. So like, I'm a messy person. Like I just am. That is just, I am a messy person. Okay. But part of my vision is this idea that when I walk home, if I were to see somebody out and about, that I would be able to welcome them home and without a moment's notice, know that they could walk in the door and feel like our home was just waiting for them to arrive. Right. So that is my vision of my home. Now, what that requires is that maybe I'm a little bit more tidy. Right. So I also have to recognize that my vision is not that I am now the tidiest person in the world. I'm always 100% organized. My desk is always clean. No, that's not part of my vision. That's not my definition of success. That is somebody else's, which is fantastic, but it's not mine. Mine is, why do I really care? I actually don't care if my desk is messy. For me, what I care about is that when I bring people into my home, that it is really welcoming. And so that does require some different actions. So I think, again, Lisa, I love what you talked about in terms of identity. It's recognizing our identity, embracing our identity, not feeling like we have to make it something else. And another piece that I will always remember is I had a friend who hired an organizational person to help with her room, and she had clothes all over the floor, and she said, I know you're going to tell me to hang them up and put them away. And the woman said, no, I want you to get the most beautiful decorative basket you can find. And I want you to put it on the floor exactly where the clothes normally go. Because after I leave, I promise you, give it about 3 days and you're going to start putting them on the floor again. Now just have a basket to capture them. And so I think of that, what is the metaphorical basket for all of us, because we are going to continue to do those things. Can we shift our habits and improve them? Absolutely. So it's not about thinking, oh, well, I'll never change. I just need to, just settle for what it's always been. But it's about saying those improvements that I want to make, how do they strengthen my identity, align with my identity, and allow me to also recognize I don't want to spend all this time where I know there's going to be a lot of resistance trying to become something I'm not. I want to really lean in to the things that I am, and what can I do to really maximize those things. And then when that doesn't happen along the way, there's a phrase that you hear a lot in meditation, which is neutral curiosity. So when somebody is going to come over and my house is a complete wreck, I could judge myself and slap my wrists and all that, or I could say, what happened there? Kind of interesting, right? Like, where did that come from? Where did that resistance come from? What's going on there? And it's such a different window into ourselves rather than that harsh judgment, which just cuts off the conversation with yourself and just starts a loop of negative dialogue, which we could all win an Olympic medal for how good our brains are at, shutting us down. It's like, it's crazy. If there was yeah, it would be crazy if that was a competition. Everyone would win.
Certainly we've learned or are trying as part of our vision to be kinder to ourselves, right? We have the ring the bell for awesome, celebrate the small wins. Patty and I have talked about that. Give yourself permission and to recognize that you have achieved. Where do we start, Lois? What's the first step in creating this vision and this approach for ourselves as we come to time? What would be the first step, the one thing that you'll recommend everybody in the room do?
So the first step is to carve out some time for yourself and then protect that time. It's one thing to carve out time in your calendar, right? We've all done it. We've all, may set an appointment with ourselves and it's supposed to be the most important, just like everyone else. It doesn't work, right? So we have got to not just carve out that time, but protect that time that we have set aside for ourselves. A time when you don't have to go off into the woods, and be surrounded by small woodland creatures. You don't have to have the most beautiful journal, but you just need to carve out that time for yourself. So that's number one, is really carving out, maybe it's 1 hour where you can just close the doors, put your phone into a drawer, put it on airplane mode, make sure people know that yes, they can wait 59 minutes, 58 minutes, 57 minutes until you get back to them, that actually the world will not end. And then for yourself, really be able to say, am I in a space to be really honest with myself? Am I in a space where I feel like this is going to serve me, where I want to focus on this work? And then if the answer is yes, then that first thing that I would do is get a big stack, and Pat knows this, and many people in this room know this about me, get a big stack of blank paper. Now I have papers all over my desk. I can't find the big stack of blank ones, but get a big stack of blank paper. No lines, no dots, nothing. Big stack of blank paper. Get your favorite pen and just start thinking about how you've gotten to where you are. And maybe just, think about, it's kind of like however far you want to go in the future, think about that in the past. If you're thinking about a 90-day vision in the future, just think about the past 90 days. If you're thinking about a 5-year vision, think about the past 5 years. So again, just kind of allow yourself to figure out maybe what time frame resonates with you, and really just think about what have been those driving forces, in this era, in these eras leading up to it. What have been the accomplishments? What have been the obstacles? What have been the influencers who've been really impactful, positively and negatively? What's been the overall kind of energy or tone, that I felt? And maybe it was like a roller coaster, and I was happy and I was excited and I was terrified and I was scared and I loved it and I hated it and all of that. So that's the first step, is to really carve out that time, protect that time, really ask yourself and see if you feel ready to be really honest. And then get that blank sheet of paper, get that pen, and start really thinking about the trajectory that you've had over this past period of time. And even just doing that will reveal so much. And I have had people who've had some really challenging experiences go through that process. And I had one gentleman who came to a workshop I did, and he did that, and then he had to leave early unexpectedly, and he came back and he went through the workshop again. Second time, so many of the things didn't come out because he had kind of really released them, right? And so it's that idea again of, when you have that pen and you're getting out into paper, you're not scratching anything out, it really allows you just to do that part of it. Then, of course, then it's, okay, now really taking stock, where am I am, what's aligned, misaligned, etc. So, and I could wish I could stay with you all day, because there's so many, other pieces, but those are the sort of first steps. And even just those steps alone are so powerful in and of themselves. And more importantly than the process, what you've done in that is proven to yourself and given yourself that inner confidence that, you know what, I can not only carve out, but protect 60 minutes of my time. If all that happens from this is you do that and you show yourself that you can do that, success, amazing, right? If you can show yourself that you can do that, that is such a huge piece of it, and the rest will flow from there.
Words of wisdom, and I'm going to be picking on you again, Lois, to bring you back.
Please do.
I really appreciate everybody coming out. I realized my vision is to meet people. I love people's stories. I like listening to their stories. Everybody has an amazing story. My vision is to meet as many people as I possibly can and understand and hear their story, because everybody, they're just amazing stories out there. But I do hope that you've enjoyed our session, and I do hope that you'll come back, because I love seeing each and every one of you. This is a highlight of my week. And I hope that you might come back and joining us next week. Make yourself a promise to not only start and carve that time away, like Lois said, but make a commitment to yourself to meet with somebody you have never met before and have a virtual coffee. I promise you, it will change your entire outlook. I wish you a great day. You've always made mine. Thanks, Lois. You're awesome.
Thank you, everyone.